Some people are very okay going low carb because they don't really like carbs. But if you like carbs or you're a very active person and you need carbs, then there's no reason for you to say goodbye to carbs. Instead, it just comes down to understanding how carbs work within our bodies and how we can approach them to have the best results. Hello there, and welcome back to Day's Health Diaries. If this is your first time on this channel, my name is Daisy, and I'm a certified health and wellness coach. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I've come across, and you've also probably come across a lot of times, and that's the part where people say that carbs make you fat. That if you want to lose weight, the only way for you to do that, and the easiest way for you to do that, is to stop eating carbs. I can't even count the number of times that I've come across people who are on a diet and they say the only thing that I'm doing is not eating carbs. I'm not eating pasta, I'm not eating potatoes, I'm not drinking soda, I'm just staying away from all carbs because all carbs are bad. And as long as I'm not eating carbohydrates, carbs, then I'm going to lose weight. And maybe over time, overhearing so many people say that carbs are bad and carbs will make you fat, then you've also started thinking that if you want to be successful on your weight loss journey, then you also have to say goodbye to carbs. But is that the case? So that's what I'm going to be covering today. And as I do on this channel, I don't like saying that someone is completely wrong or that is just one answer to something. Instead, I like looking at the nuances because behind every myth, there's a reason behind that belief. There's a reason why people believe that myth to be true. And some of these can be grounded in truth, and some of these can be grounded in popular opinion. There's just a lot that goes into it, and I like understanding why people actually believe the myth before I can address it. And that's what we're going to do. First, we're going to look at why people believe that carbs make you fat. Then we're going to look at what the science says. And then we're going to look at the practical approach to carbs, which is part of a sustainable lifestyle, which is what I also do in my Better in 90 program. Yes. So now let's get into the first thing. Do carbs really make you fat? Let's see why people believe this. Reason number one, which I'll call a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. If you've watched movies or series that were released in the 1980s, 1990s, and even the early 2000s, you've probably heard of these. A woman will probably look at a cake and will go, no, no, I can't eat that because, a moment on the lips and then that's a lifetime on the hips. When you eat carbs, your body releases a hormone known as insulin. And without getting into the technicalities of what insulin does or what it doesn't do and its relationship with diabetes, what I'll say is that people think that when this insulin is released in their bodies, it directly turns their carbs into fat. For some reason, they think that immediately you eat these sweet potatoes or you eat these Oreos, then that insulin is somehow going to come in, take those carbohydrates and turn them into fat. The second one is what we see so much on social media, the low carb diet results. You've probably seen someone go keto or go low carb or try any other kind of diet, whether it's cabbage soup diet or anything that requires them to go really low on the carbs. And of course, they start losing weight. And if people ask them what they are doing, they'll say, yeah, I just stopped eating bread, I stopped eating pasta, I stopped eating potatoes. All I do now is eat proteins and fats. I no longer do carbs, or if I do carbs, I just do really, really low carbs. And when people hear this, they start thinking, okay, that makes sense. Then carbs are definitely the enemy. And you start thinking that if I do what my friend did and I stop eating bread and I stop eating all those potatoes, then definitely the weight will come off. And because so many people have been so successful on these low carb diets, people start thinking, okay, the thing is, if you get rid of carbs, you get rid of the weight. So carbs are the ones that make you fat. Number three is that people don't see the difference between Oreos and sweet potatoes. When they go low carb or they go minimal carb or just go no carb, because the people who just don't do carbs, yeah. When they do that, when they decide to get rid of the carbs in their diets, what they do is that they eliminate all types of carbohydrates. They don't see the difference between taking a bag of cookies to their home versus taking whole grain pasta. They don't see the difference between a sweet potato, a baked sweet potato, versus an Oreo. And I'll keep saying Oreos because I love Oreos. Yeah, they don't see the difference between cookies and whole carbs. And because we know things like chips and cookies and sugary drinks are bad for us and they are carbs, then people start thinking that, okay, if cookies are bad, then definitely even the potatoes are bad. A carb is a carb. If I cannot have cookies, I cannot have bread. If I cannot have bread, I cannot have potatoes. Carbs make you fat. So anything that has carbs is bad for me and it will make me gain weight. Again, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. Number 4 is the effect of carbs on our blood sugar. Okay, again, this will tie to the bad carbs versus good carbs debate because people know that, let's say you dig into a bag of cookies and you've had that, and then you wait for about 30 minutes and you'll realize that your blood sugar at first will go up and then it will seriously crash. It's just a huge spike and a very, very big crash. And that doesn't happen with all carbs, but because it happens with some carbs and people realize that, okay, yes, I ate these carbs and then I have this spike and crash and then I end up feeling hungry again, they think then that carbs are bad for you if you're on a weight loss journey, because if you're going to be hungry again in 30 minutes, then there's no point in actually eating this thing when you can actually have maybe proteins and fats that will keep you feeling fuller for longer. But they don't realize that there's a difference in the carbs that will give you that sugar spike and the ones that will give you balanced blood sugar levels. And because they don't see that difference, they just assume that all carbs will make you fat because all carbs will make you feel like you're hungry very soon, and that will make you overeat. And if you're just spiking and crashing and spiking and crashing, then you're just eating and crashing, eating and crashing. You're going to end up eating more calories than you actually need. And then they say, okay, all carbs are bad. Carbs will make me fat because of this reaction. And number 5, we cannot have these nuances without talking about the media. We cannot have these nuances without talking about the media because media plays a huge role in how we think about food. And for a long time, the media has always portrayed carbs as this really bad thing. Because, like, if you're talking about someone who's on a diet in a movie, and then what will they do? They'll go off carbs. If someone maybe has lost a lot of weight recently and then the media goes to them and they ask, okay, how did you do it? They'll say, well, I stopped eating bread, I stopped eating potatoes, I stopped snacking on cookies, and that's how the weight fell off. And because we continuously hear these things, it just becomes ingrained in our brains because we start thinking, okay, if you're eating carbs, you're gaining fat. Carbs will make you fat. That's the constant messaging. Carbs are going to make you fat. A moment on the lips is a lifetime on the hips. And that's the messaging that many people had back then. And when I say back then, I'm talking about the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. And that's having a resurgence right now because when we start talking about things like skinny talk, you'll see that there's this propensity to just shun carbs and maybe adopt more proteins and more fats because, again, subtly, okay, it's not very in your face, but you can see the messaging is more of carbs will make you fat. You want to be skinny, stay away from carbs. You want to be lean, stay away from fats. It's mainstream media, and this is the messaging that we're constantly getting, and that's why many people start thinking that, okay, if I want to lose weight, I've got to lose the carbs. Okay, now we understand why people think this. And maybe you've seen some of the reasons you've ever thought that carbs are bad. Because I'll admit, I've also once thought that carbs are bad. And there were times in the past when I would go on a diet and I would go low carb and I would focus more on proteins and fats because I thought that was the easiest way to lose weight. And yes, it worked. But again, it had this yo-yo effect because I would lose the weight because I was going very low on the carbs. And then once I had lost the weight and I started eating normally again, I would start eating more carbs and then I would gain the weight. And then I would go low carb and I would lose the weight. It was just this yo-yo diet. It's almost like the spike crash, spike crash. But I understand why people will think that cutting carbs will work because I thought it. I've seen people who think it. Even now, I still come across people who tell me I'm on a diet and what I'm doing, I'm not eating bread. Bread is a really common theme. I also love bread. Yes, bread is a common thing. I'm not eating chapatis, I'm not eating rotis, I'm not trying anything with wheat flour, I'm not doing pasta because I have to lose the weight. And now we can understand the reasons behind that. But does the science actually support our beliefs? Let's look into that. Okay, when it comes to science, there are a few things that we need to note. The first one is that calories are king. It doesn't really matter where you're getting your calories from. It doesn't matter whether you're doing 100% carbs, 100% protein, 100% fat. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your body will look at those calories in terms of energy expenditure. If you're consuming more calories than you use, then you will end up gaining weight. If you're consuming fewer calories than your body needs, then you will end up losing weight. But it's not always that simple. It's not like 1800 calories of carbs is equal to 1800 calories of protein. In my last video, I touched on why calories are not equal. But assuming calories in versus calories out, then your body doesn't really care whether you're getting your calories from carbs or you're getting them from protein or fats. Calories will be calories, and as long as you're consuming less calories, fewer calories than you need to maintain your current body weight, then you'll end up losing weight. Number two, which will tie back to my previous video, but now I'll keep it very short, is that carbs are not equal. Just like calories are not equal, carbs are not equal. Because what you get from a sweet potato will be very different from what you get from a cookie. Let's put the two side by side. When you eat this cookie, assuming it's full fat and it's full of sugar, then you're going to get that spike that we were talking about. You're going to spike and then you're going to crash. And that will leave you feeling very hungry very soon. But it's not just about the hunger. The cookie is also very minimal when it comes to things like micronutrients. So the nutrient density that you're going to get from the cookie is very minimal. Yes, for a dessert now and then. But if this is just a huge part of your current diet, you'll realize that you'll end up being very deficient in the key micronutrients because okay, you're not eating cookies all the time. But if your diet is mainly made up of these ultra processed carbs, then yes, you will be depleted when it comes to these micronutrients. But when we look at something like a sweet potato and you've baked it, you've prepared it well, then we're talking about first you're going to be fuller than you will be on the cookie because a sweet potato is very filling. It takes time for that sweet potato to move through your digestive system, and that keeps you feeling fuller for longer. But it's not just that. Your sweet potato is also full of vitamins and minerals. So it's not just nourishing you physically in that hour or two where you've eaten it and you're just feeling very full. It's also going to play a very vital role in your overall health. So it's very different from eating a cookie. So when we say that carbs will make you fat, yes, cookies and other ultra processed carbs are likely to make you fat because they don't make you feel full for long, and they're also very depleted when it comes to minerals and vitamins. But when you talk about carbs like sweet potatoes and Irish potatoes and any other whole carbs, then it's a very different story because now we're talking about you're going to be full and you're also going to get enough nutrients. So when it comes to carb, the real issue comes when we are talking about eating too many ultra processed carbs. They are low in fiber, they are low in micronutrients, they don't keep you feeling fuller for long, and they also deprive you of the key micronutrients that you need to have a healthy gut microbiome and also a healthy body. Number three, let's talk about water weight. Many people go on a low carb diet or a no carb diet and they start seeing these ridiculous changes in their weights. So maybe someone was like 150 pounds when they first started. And then after the end of the first week, they weigh themselves again. And now they're like at 140 pounds. Okay, or 145 pounds. But they don't realize that this is actual water weight because if you continue on that low carb diet, you're not going to be losing 5 to 10 pounds per week anymore. It's going to be relatively stable. So if you're losing weight, you're probably going to be losing maybe like 1 to 2 pounds a week, and that's going to be gradual, and you might even plateau like you would on any other diet, and you will not be seeing these crazy changes that you are seeing in the first place. But what caused them in the first place? It's all about water weight. When you eat a lot of carbs, your body also stores a lot of water. So immediately you stop eating so many carbs, then you realize that your body also starts letting go of that water. And that's what you see on the scale. That's water weight. You're losing water weight. People always talk about losing so much weight on a low carb diet. But while yes, it's possible to lose a lot of weight in the long term, in the short term, it's often water weight. So it's not like that low carb diet helped you lose 10 pounds or 5 pounds that first week because carbs were bad. No, carbs were just causing your body to hold on to more water, and that's what you're losing. It's not fat, at least not in the first few weeks. Okay, we have our beliefs here and we have the science here. Is there a way we can bring the two together? Of course, because that's what we do on this channel. Now let's figure out how to bring the two. Let's have this beautiful marriage. Let's marry the two and see what we come up with. Number one, you have to choose better carbs. As we have said, carbs are not equal. So if you're going to focus on eating more whole foods, more whole carbs, the ones that are minimally processed or not even processed at all. And when I say minimally processed, it's like if you take a sweet potato and you bake it, it might look like you've not really done anything to it, but you've processed it. Because if you were to pick that sweet potato from the garden, it wouldn't be baked. You've processed it. It's minimally processed. And now when we talk about ultra processed foods, those are like food-like items. Because like if you look at Pringles, at first I used to think that Pringles were actually potatoes, but then when I looked at it, I realized that these guys really just break down different ingredients and then they combine them. It's not actually a potato. It's something that they make out of combining so many ingredients, and that's what you get in a Pringle. That is ultra processed. It's no longer food, it's more like a food-like item. So when we come to choosing carbs, we want to choose better carbs. And by better carbs, you're talking about the minimally processed ones. We're talking about fruits and vegetables and whole grains. We're talking about whole grain pasta. We're talking about whole grain bread. We're talking about sweet potatoes. Yes, I still come back there. We're talking about Irish potatoes. We're talking about things that will have a lot of fiber, and they'll also be very rich in micronutrients because they are minimally processed. These foods will keep you feeling fuller for longer, and they're also beneficial for you when it comes to your overall health. And when it comes to your weight, the more that you're full, the less likely you are to start looking for snacks or just maybe try to have another meal because you're going to be full enough. These are foods that can enable you to get on a regular schedule. You can easily do breakfast, lunch, and supper and maybe one snack during that day and you'll still be full. But if you were to eat maybe Oreos, yes, I still keep coming back to the Oreos. If you were to have a diet full of Oreos and soda, then yes, you're going to have those blood spikes and crashes, and that's eventually going to lead you to start eating more food, and you'll end up overeating, and then that calorie deficit that you are aiming at will just be, a dream. Secondly, it's very important to pair your foods. Carbs alone, yes, will likely cause that spike and crash. Even when we're talking about whole carbs, like, yes, our sweet potatoes and our whole grain bread, alone, they're very naked. And the thing with naked carbs is that you want to dress them up. You want to add some fat there, you want to add some protein. And the goal behind this is to ensure that you slow down your digestion. And when you do that, you keep your energy level stable for longer. For example, instead of just having plain toast, you can add peanut butter in there, you can add an egg. Yeah, that will be a really nice layer. You can have like the toast and then the egg and then some peanut butter. That might sound weird to some people, but that is something that I'll totally eat. Even though now I'm definitely going vegan for a while, I'm trying that out. But in my egg eating days, that will definitely be something that I will eat. The idea is pair your carbs with some proteins and fats, and then you'll end up slowing down the digestion, and you'll also make your meals very delicious, and that will help you keep your energy levels stable as opposed to just having the carbs. Again, we're talking about whole carbs here. We're not talking about pairing your Oreos with eggs and peanut butter. You can do that. It's actually better than just not trying. Whatever you can do is great. But if you really want to keep yourself feeling full and you're on a weight loss diet, which means that you're on a calorie deficit, then it's just better to go for the whole foods. So pair those with proteins and fats. You'll notice that you feel fuller for longer, and that will make it easier for you to keep up with the calorie deficit. You won't be feeling deprived and you'll be feeling way more energetic as opposed to the, spikes and crashes. Number 3, you have to look at your calories. Like we said, It doesn't really matter where your calories come from. It doesn't matter whether you're doing proteins or carbs or fats. Whatever you're doing, you have to keep your eye on that number. So let's say your number is 2000, assuming you've calculated the 2000 based on your height, your weight, your age, your gender, and all the factors that play into your total maintenance calories. Now let's assume you're doing a deficit. Your maintenance calories are maybe 2500, and now you've decided to do 2000 calories as your deficit so that you have that 500 calorie deficit. Yes. So what can you do? You can actually just eat carbs and hit the 2000 and you would lose weight. But as we've seen, as much as even if you choose whole carbs, you might still end up with those spikes and crashes. Even that sweet potato will give you that, but it will be at a much more minimal degree compared to if you are going to do Oreos. So what you want to do is mix things up. Just add proteins and fats. Like if you're very active, you can just do at least 1 gram per pound of body weight for your proteins. And for your fats, you can decide on a percentage. And that depends on you and your preferences. But you also have to keep an eye on this if you're a woman, because fats play a very vital role in our hormonal health. So let's assume you do a split of 40, 30, and 30, which is your carbs are 40%, your fats are 30%, and you're eating 30% protein, which means that in that day, you'll not only have hit your protein and fat goals, but you also have had carbs. Like we said, carbs are not going to make you fat on their own, but they will affect how full you are and then the amount of micronutrients that you're getting. The idea here is calculate your calorie goal and then make sure that you're factoring in enough proteins and enough fats, and then you can factor in your carbs. The truth is, you can actually lose weight and do well with a low carb diet because many people don't even need carbs because their bodies don't really rely on carbs for energy. That's why people go on keto and they do well, because their bodies are able to use those proteins and those fats as energy sources. So just focus on eating a healthy balance of all the macros, because restricting your carbs as much as you don't really need them is not really the best way to go, especially when you're talking about a lifestyle change. If you like bread, it's not like you're going to stop liking bread just because you're on a weight loss diet. And you need to understand how to eat bread even when you're losing weight if you want to continue eating bread even after you've lost weight. So how do you do that? Just calculate that calorie count and then just break down your macros, and then make sure that you're eating enough to stay within your calorie goal, your calorie limit, and then make sure that you're getting enough of the macros. They all play a very important role in our bodies. Carbs are there for the energy. Like I said, you don't really need them, but it's good to factor them in because they're going to be part of your life going forward. Because if you start losing weight now because you're not eating pasta and you're not eating bread and you're not eating Oreos, then what happens when you finally lose the weight? What will happen to you when you actually want to bring these things back into your diet? What will happen? For many people, because they've learned how to lose weight without eating these things, immediately they start eating them fast. They're very excited and they eat a lot. And secondly, they don't even know how to integrate them into their meals. So they end up adding weight. So we want to prevent that by making sure that even if you're in a calorie deficit, you understand how to make these things a part of your diet. Carbs will not make you fat. Instead, it comes down to how many calories you're eating. And then again, you also have to factor in the kind of carbs that you're eating, because if you're eating mostly ultra-processed carbs, even if you have a really good calorie goal, like 2000 calories, because that's a lot of food, if you're eating Oreos, or you're eating very ultra processed carbs, then you'll find that it's going to be very easy to hit the 2000 and even go over. If your maintenance was 2500, you can even hit 4000 in one day if you're eating the ultra processed carbs. So just pay attention to your calorie goals, then pay attention to the kind of carbs that you choose. That brings us to the end of this section. I hope that you learned something. I would like to know what you learned. You can comment down below. I'm very excited because the channel is growing. Yes, 1 subscriber per week. This week it could be you. Yeah. And that said, I also run a program called Better in 90. And this is all about making sustainable changes to your diet so that you can lose weight. Carbs are not the enemy here, or fats or protein. Instead, we just work with all these macros as well as enough micronutrients to make sure that you're not only healthy, but you're also hitting your weight loss goals. But most importantly, you're learning how to eat now so that you can continue eating the same way in the future, so that you can finally say goodbye to yo-yo dieting. It doesn't work. It's not even good for your body, and enough studies have shown that. So the idea here is to just show you how you can make sustainable changes so that you can have a wonderful, wonderful future and a healthy one, where you're not always thinking about this food is bad, that food is bad, nothing is off limits, and instead we just learn how to work with what you love. And if you're having issues with your metabolism and you think, oh gosh, it's a bit too slow, I have a program and it fixes your metabolism in 28 days. It actually has a bonus of 1 week, and it has vegan as well as standard diets, and it works for everyone, and it's very easy to follow. It's not restrictive, because you'll not find me telling you that you cannot have carbs on these. Even with your metabolism, you need those carbohydrates. And even if you don't need them, if you want them, they're there. So be sure to look at those links down below if that's something you will be interested in. And that said, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Next week, I'll be back with another myth, and we're going to keep doing this until we break them all down. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there, and sometimes people spread these things because they believe them, because they've kept hearing the same thing over and over. I mean, if you just keep hearing that if you quit eating bread, then you're going to lose weight, it's very easy for you to think that carbs are bad. But it's because it lacks context, and the more we add context to these things, the more people can understand that, okay, there's no black and white when it comes to food. Instead, there's a gray area, and what works for one person will not necessarily work for the other person. Some people are very okay going low carb because they don't really like carbs. But if you like carbs, or you're a very active person and you need carbs, then there's no reason for you to say goodbye to carbs. Instead, it just comes down to understanding how carbs work within our bodies and how we can approach them to have the best results. And that's what I'm trying to do with everything, whether it's carbs, whether it's fats, whether it's proteins. I just want people to understand exactly how they work. And then we can all work towards having very sustainable diets, very sustainable lifestyles, where we are not always worrying about this is bad for me or that will definitely ruin my diet. And no, a moment on the lips does not mean it will definitely be on your hips for a lifetime. There is actually a gray area. Sometimes it will be on another organ. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful week ahead, and see you for the next video. And no, that was a joke. Yeah, that moment on the lips, your cake is not going to another body part. It's definitely not going to work like that. That was just a joke.